Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and today we have a special guest. We've been trying to hook up for probably 6 months. Uh, Miss Deletta Dean, and she's gonna. Off camera, I was saying, D, tell our audience from kindergarten. She was like, kindergarten? Yeah. So the ball is in your court, Miss Dean. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and go back to where you were raised, where you went to school, some of the mentors that helped you, and where you're at now.
Absolutely. Good morning. Good morning. So yeah, I was telling Carlos, my friends call me D. So he and I are friends. So he called me D, right? So I grew up, right on 39th Street in Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up on 39th and Tracy. Anybody that knows the dividing line of truth, you know what that's like, right? Went to Faxon Elementary, which is now a senior housing community. So it's kind of interesting to drive by there, especially the irony that that's the field that I work in. But we'll get into that a little later. Just grew up. I was fortunate enough to be raised with both of my parents. So I know that that really was critical for me to have my father, my biological father, in the house with me. My dad, he was a hustler. He just was. He worked, but he experienced extreme racism, and he had got injured at his job, and it was he slipped and fell on some ice. He was a butcher, and he slipped and fell on ice, and he hurt his back, and they didn't pay him. They fought him tooth and nail. And my father, like I said, he was a hustler. He would go out and, chop wood. And I remember as a girl, and you can see me, I'm just straight out diva, right? But I remember, putting on gloves and going to help my dad, cut wood, so that we could sell it so that he could help pay the bills. And we would be, in his, I call it the little Sanford and Son truck, right? We would be in his truck going over to all these gigantic houses, and the people would be in their houses warm while we were unloading wood so that they could keep their houses warm. But that's what he used to make sure that we had food and we had Christmas. And he also gambled. He played poker and all those types of things. He would do, they back in the day they called the little petty or penny cabs or petty cabs, where ladies would come out from the grocery store and didn't have a car. They would pay. It was kind of like Uber back then, right? Right? You'd be at the store and he would charge them, $3, $5 just to take them home and take their groceries up, to their house. So that's what I remember about my dad, about being a provider. I remember my dad always being there when I woke up in the morning. It was never a night that I woke up or a morning that I woke up that my father wasn't there. So I just remember always seeing that Black male role model in my life. So, just fast forwarding high school, went to Westport High School. Shout out to those Tigers, right? And good student. I was always a good student there. Ended up meeting my son's dad there, and had plans to go to college and all that good stuff, and ended up being intimate, having sex with my son's father for the first time, and just like a lot of us out there, I got pregnant, right? So the hardest thing for me was to come home and tell my dad that I was pregnant. It was devastating to me to be able to have to be able to tell him that, because I was, I think it was maybe 3 months and I was definitely showing, so I had to tell him. And he thought my life was over. I remember him asking me, did I want to marry my son's dad? And I was just like, no. I told my dad, I said, you know what, I made one mistake. I don't want to make two. So ended up, raising my son. But I always knew that I wanted to go to college. I just remember some mentors. We talked about mentors in high school, some of my teachers, the principal, Mr. Franklin, who's passed now, some of my teachers, Mrs. James, she's passed away now, but I always remember seeing these strong Black teachers. Back in the day when I was in school, that's all we had were Black teachers in school. I mean, that's what I saw. And they lived in the communities where we lived, right? So my teacher, one of them, she lived right off of 63rd in Paseo, so it's just like our teachers lived in the same communities where we were. So they held us accountable because that was our village, right? So I just remembered I always wanted to go to college. So, I'll cut to the chase. It took me about 10 years to finish my undergraduate degree, while taking care of my son and all of that. My son would be sitting in the bed with me while I'm studying. I'm working full time, going to school full time, and raising my son. Did that 10 years, still working, and then working my way up with my career as well. Ended up getting married and finished my master's degree. And had my second child actually when I was married. So I have a 34-year-old and a 20-year-old. So I tell people I have.
Come on, you're looking like a baby yourself.
Yeah, I am a baby, right? So yeah, my oldest is 34, the one I had when I was in school, and then my daughter's 20. She's a college student. So did all of those things. It was tough, So I'm telling that story. I was a teenage mom. Just working my way through. So from a teenage mom to right now, I am the regional vice president for the Midwest region for a national nonprofit organization that's based in DC. So my responsibility is I oversee 13 states and I have 58 organizations and I have a team of 9. 2 of my team members work out of Cincinnati. So I travel quite a bit. And I have a lot of responsibility. And that, the Bible scripture that resonates most with me is to whom much is given, much is required. So I intentionally stay here, in Kansas City. This is my home. This is my tribe, and I've always been intentional about wanting to give back because this community gave to me so much, the people that live here. And I've just been very intentional about giving back. So that's the space that I work in terms of affordable housing. I do it here in Kansas City and in 12 other states, and mostly in Black and Brown communities where the organization that I work for, we provide funding and technical assistance to nonprofit organizations who primarily, look at affordable housing as a way of building wealth. I look at building Black wealth particularly, and I also work in Native American communities and in rural communities as well.
Cutoff King, I'm the Cutoff King because you're talking about that affordable housing, and that's major across the country. And I wanted to get your specific viewpoint on how you see Kansas City. I just was talking to some people, I don't know, they were in DC or somewhere last night, and they were talking about affordable housing, and it was on the national news, the 6 o'clock PBS. That seems to be a major issue. And do you think that they're giving lip service to that, or are they putting anything in concrete for all these homeless people and what have you? And because how you told your story, you know how important that housing is because of what you and your dad and what you've seen and your neighbors and where you grew up. That affordable housing hits us really hard.
It does. And it is not lip service. I have the 13 upper and lower Midwest states. So that's from basically the Dakotas all the way over to Michigan. So I've seen it in terms of the impact that can be made when the resources are allocated to communities. The organization that I work for, we are congressionally chartered. So we're in the federal budget. So the allocation that we receive goes to organizations who do the work, right? So they're producing affordable housing units and maintaining them and producing Black homeowners. So I see it in action. Now, in terms of the homelessness, it depends on the different organizations. For instance, there's an organization right now that's within my region that is using ARPA fund, the ARPA money, which is basically money that was received because of the pandemic, right? So they're using that money to build 24 units of transitional housing. So that's happening all across the nation. So it definitely is real. It's definitely needed. And I've also seen when you put families in housing, it's not just about the housing, but it stabilizes that family to the point where, they can not have to worry about it, obviously, because it's there, but can go on to go to school, make sure they have jobs and those types of things. So affordable housing is really just, it's a launching pad to a better quality of life, particularly in areas or communities of color, because our communities have historically been what we call, the term is disinvested. So basically that means money hasn't come to the Black community, right? And it's been very intentional that it hasn't. So my job, and there's 3 of us that work for my organization, right? So, and 2 of us are women of color, which actually 3 of us, one's an Asian American woman, and then 2 of us are Black females. 4 of us run the nation, right, for this organization in terms of affordable housing. So we are very intentional about helping communities of color. And so is my organization. So I've seen it work. And
how do you see overall economic development in the Black community?
Economic development. First off, we have to make sure that we keep our money in our communities, right? Because other communities do it. Other communities, and I don't remember the statistic, but it's like the Black dollar leaves the Black community within, I don't know, hours. Within hours. But in some communities, Native American communities, I'll take that rural community, and some of that is because the infrastructure is not there for them to go elsewhere. But some of it is very intentional in Asian American communities that money stays in that
the Jewish community.
So we need to buy Black. Go ahead.
Let me say this. I'm from New York, and I grew up in a Jewish community. And I'm telling you this, I don't care if you wanted a pair of socks. If you went to one of them, they had a cousin, they had a brother that they was going to sell. You wasn't going to walk away with that money.
Right. So, but, we have Black businesses here in Kansas City, and I know I'm very intentional about shopping. It's like this weekend. I didn't even want to say how much money I spent this weekend because there were different Black vendors and different locations that I went. But I made sure to support. You can't support all of them, but they have to have the product that you want, and
that killer jacket that you had on this weekend. Where'd you get that from?
I got that from a Black-owned boutique. Micah.
All right.
I did. Micah's. Just shout out to Dre.
Yeah, give them a plug.
Yes, that was Micah's. I got that jacket from Micah's. The things, absolutely. And I wore it to Fashion Week, and got all kinds of attention. I ended up running into her this weekend and told her, I said, "Hey, I wore your jacket to Fashion Week," and I told her, and she was like, "Really?" I said, "Awesome, absolutely, yes." So I try, to shop Black as much as I possibly can. And I encourage all of us, all of your viewers here, don't just give lip service to supporting Black businesses. That's where you got to spend your money. I'm on 18th and Vine. There's other places in Kansas City. I love oysters. I love them when I travel, right? I got to understand I'm in the Midwest, so the oysters here aren't going to taste the same when I'm in Maryland, right? But I go here and, shout out to Soiree. I go down there and I'll eat the oysters or and those types of things. So you got to support your businesses, people. You got to support Black business.
So what do you have planned for 2023 going into 2024?
It's all about just building and continuing to continuing to serve. I have a servant's heart, again, because that's the way I was raised. So continue to give back to my community, in terms of I do this kind of work for a living, but I really, giving back, community service. I like being out in the community, boots on the ground. My organization has a week where we do community service. My organization gives us like 40 hours to go out and do community service. So those are the types of things that I look at doing in 23, 24. And then, of course, traveling within my region and looking at, how this work in affordable housing is being done. And I hope to be able to bring some of that back here in Kansas City, to be very honest, and to be able to sit at the table. We have experts here that are working in the affordable housing space. I consider myself an expert in that too, and that I'm looking at affordable housing in 13 states. And some of it, quite frankly, they're doing things that we're just getting started to doing. We're just kind of, getting our wheels grinding and moving forward in terms of, community land trust or shared equity. And I've got states that's been doing this work for years. So, it's just like, for us to be able to continue, us as in Kansas City, to be able to expand, our reach in affordable housing to include the unhoused.
All right. Now, because we're getting ready to wrap this up, I want you to talk to some of our youth. Since you're a female, specifically what you say to young, because I told you that my youngest was pregnant and got a young grandchild and all of that, but life is not over. Talk to some of these high school kids and college girls right now.
Absolutely. My son, who is also a college graduate, and he is a local sports radio commentary. He does sports commentary here. He's also on CBS Sports. He has some podcasts. He's made a documentary here about basketball. So my son is a product of a teenage mom, but he's made his own success. And I would say that's in large part due to him seeing me, still, as we say, still grinding as a teenage mom, understanding that my life wasn't over. I know they tell us that when we have children as teenagers, but your life does not have to be over. Now, it's sacrifice and it's a lot of work. I'm not going to tell you it's easy, but nothing worth having is ever easy, right? So I started out, like I said, teenage mom working. I worked at Burger King. I've had some really crappy jobs. Right now, I'm a vice president. So that's what I want you to understand. It's just like, you got to work through it. It's not going to be easy, but your life is not over. And if you have those goals, make sure you have that village around you, those champions around you, those people that support you. If you don't have, that relationship with your parents, then there are other individuals in your churches, in your community centers, your Boys and Girls Club. You find someone, you find your champion. You find that person that will continue to motivate you when you just feel like you don't have it all. And then, and lastly, I want to say this, I know all of us aren't believers, because I don't know, I cannot leave this call without saying this. God has ordered my steps. God has ordered my steps. There have been doors that he's closed that I thought that I wanted to have open, right? But he closed those doors because he wanted me right where I am for such a time as this, right? So be strong in your faith. If you are a person of faith, make sure that you be strong and find you a home church, and that'll be your village as well.
You know what? Earlier when you first started off, something came to mind. Tupac Shakur came to mind. It's like you were saying, picture me rolling.
Picture me rolling.
Yeah, because you said I had them crappy jobs and this and that, but now I'm a vice president. Picture that.
Yes. Yeah. And I tell people, sometimes I tell them that journey not to gloat or boast or whatever, because God has blessed me tremendously. but to tell them to be encouraged. And that's the same, with, young men. And I particularly tell young women that because I just remember the stigma attached to me, when I had to tell my parents that I was pregnant and all the whispering and stuff, that was going on, and basically them thinking that, I wasn't going to amount to anything. And they both would be very proud of me.
Hey, D, it was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show.
Absolutely.
And I think that this was a very interesting interview. I think it was informative. And I'm so happy that you awoke as it relates to our community. And really, I get the vibe over the air, but where you grew up, you haven't forgot where you came from, and you still know that there are a host of individuals that are still in that same situation, but chopping wood nowadays won't get those bills paid like back in the day when we were younger.
No.
And I see you have empathy for our community. So it's a plum pleasing pleasure having you on.
Thank you for
as
having
we
me.
always close, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.